be like this, would we?
Definitely not, no. Cool. Started recording now, so you can start.
Awesome. That's, if I go, yeah, that's brilliant. Right, so I'll just check with you. Can you see that?
Yeah. Creating a high quality secondary PE experience for every young person.
Awesome. Brilliant. Let's get cracking. So again, first thing as always, I hope you're all well, you're okay. I know I can recognise some of the notes from last week, which is great. But yeah, most importantly, I hope you're doing all right. Hopefully, I don't know, in a few weeks things might be different, but yeah, but that's the most important thing. But then, yeah, so we're going to do a session around secondary P. We did primary P last week. Secondary P, again, there's some similarities and some of the stuff will kind of overlap, but there are definitely some key differences. And again, I'd be getting answers from you, because I think what's struck me with secondary P is that some of your experiences are even similar to mine. Like, I tried to give myself today, I went, yeah, 20 years ago, and I was like, no, it's actually 30 years ago. So again, a lot of the answers of great stuff will come from you. And again, the most thing I really stress is connection. Whether you're doing primary or secondary, can you connect to the group in front of you? And that sometimes, again, you'll look at the group and think, okay, this looks a handful, but it's being confident, like I'm sticking chest out and going, right, okay, I can do this. And it won't always be perfect, but it'll be the best version of you in front of them. And just making sure, and you'll see a group and there'll be people who are at loads of different levels. But then in secondary, sometimes you might get, we'll talk about this, getting like sets. So you might get a highly experienced group who you can do certain things with, or another group who are a bit disinterested in PE, and you have to work with them in a different way. But a lot of it is shifting responsibility as well, away from you being that hardest working person in that lesson. Can you create an environment where everyone's working at their own pace, learning, enjoying? And again, there's no perfect lesson. So don't ever think it's got to look perfect, or my cones have got to all be straight, or whatever. There's no perfect lesson. There's always stuff you think, well, I could have done that a bit differently. Okay, just to really look at this, what we did. This is a session before Christmas on secondary school PE, and the middle bit is one of the key things. Is we're all driven by emotions. We've all got loads of stuff going on there, and it is like, and that's if you're not in doubt, watch Inside Out again and just think, God, yeah, that's me. Sometimes I worry about that, or that makes me angry, or that feels sad there. But the most important thing is like understanding that everyone else is going through that, and I know that's very stating obvious, but if you've got a PE lesson, you know that some people are going, oh my God, I'm doing PE, I hate PE. You will have some who are going, brilliant, it's PE. I was like that. I love PE. I wasn't amazing at it, but I loved it. I thought, God, one of the best hours of my week, or 2 hours of my week. You have some people who are like, God, I know this is going to be really tough for me. I'm going to look daft or whatever. We spoke about that a bit before Christmas. We looked at comfort, stretch, panic, and I asked you about different sports, and some of you say, yeah, brilliant, I'm comfortable doing that. Some were a stretch, and some panic, I didn't like doing it. And even we looked at music-wise. If I asked you to sing on the Zoom call, some of you would be like, I'm straight into panic. And that's what you've got to understand, especially with secondary school. Now, like, emotions are really driving behaviour, and if they're doing something that's going to make them panic, you have to accept there will be a bit of fear and anger and sadness, but can you bring them round to joy with your lesson and how you are with them, or at least get them stretching and out of panic? And that comes from your values. That bottom left part of the slide, really, those are if you weren't here before Christmas, we asked who's about your favourite teachers and coaches, and those are the kind of values that came through all the way through it, and that's really important. And one thing, like enthusiasm and passionate, and one thing I think sometimes I lack, maybe being the brightest bulb is that even a phrase? Brightest bulb in the box, sharpest knife in the drawer. But I know if I'm in front of you, you'll get enthusiasm, you'll get passion, and you get someone who cares. And they're the kind of really key, and hopefully it's someone who's approachable. They're the key things to start off with. The other bits you can add on to, but they've got to have those. You've got to look like you care, and make people feel like you care. And again, before Christmas, we spoke about what TV shows and films do brilliantly is they make you want to come back again. They make it engaging. They might make it funny. It might be action-packed. Again, so you want to come back that next lesson, and you want people to feel like like I'm going to hopefully be coaching, I said this before, coaching women's cricket team over the summer, and I want them to think like it's the best hour of their week into training. And that's what you kind of want. And also thinking in mind, top right, you may love a certain sport or a game or certain thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean the groups in front of you loves it or loves the activity that you might, I don't know, play rugby and you've got, oh, it's a great game of rugby, do this, it's brilliant. And you try it with the group and they're like, they might not like it or even hate it, because it's all context driven. So again, really think that we had some Pixar rules, there'll be some more Pixar rules again. Okay, this week, lots of interesting stuff. Top left, we're going to look at what a lesson looks like or could look like. And we'll link that in with our step model that we looked at with the primary school stuff last week. Again, some similarities, but some differences as well. Or loads of creativity, and we'll be thinking some of the great game ideas, but also not just settle for, oh, that's a good game. Like, what can you add to it? What could you change? How could you make it? If you've got a group of 30 and telling them hate PE and physical activity and a bit demotivated, how can your game grab them? And also, how does it look when you're dealing with a lesson? And how are you going to be are you going to be someone who asks loads of questions, or are you going to be like, right, you need to do it this way, this is how it looks. I want you to do it this way, this way, this way. And then again, bottom right is almost, can your secondary PE lessons almost put the best way of putting it is almost hide the fact that people are being physically active. They're just enjoying it so much they don't care that like they're out of breath and all the rest of it, rather than some of the PE lessons I was part of, it was, right, you warm up, go do a lap, and you're like, oh my God. And it's almost a punishment. You warm up's a punishment. Like, no, your warm up can be like one of the funnest parts of the lesson, even in secondary. Again, so I want that central bit is I want your ideas, I want your input. So to start, so we spoke a little bit last time about the differences between primary PE and secondary, and I think that's really important, because and all the stuff you said here is the stuff I would have said 20, 30 years ago, is that it suddenly gets a bit more serious. You suddenly split up, like girls play that sport, boys play that sport, and that needs to change. And I mean, there is ability groups in secondary, and I think that's okay. That can work, but there's also a chance for peer-to-peer support. And sometimes it is a bit more structured in the specific curriculum. But I think the one thing that struck me was this, is like some people talk about pressure and performance. And again, if secondary PE is just about that, then you're literally alienating. I'm not going to guess at a percentage because that'd be wrong, but you're only a large percentage of people who are thinking, I just want to do something that's fun, I enjoy, and I might get better at. Okay, so in the chat, I've got my iPad. I sound like an old person. I've got the touch screeny. I've got the iPad over here. So I want you to look at that picture, and in the chat, what do you see? What do you see in the chat? And again, if you haven't got the chat function, don't forget to just shout it out. What do you see in that picture? This is a picture from a Youth Sport Trust article that I was looking at, researching for as part of this session. What do you see in that picture? What the kids doing? Or what the kids aren't they doing? What the kids aren't they doing? That's not even a sentence. But have a look at that picture. And in the chat, just your thoughts. Again, there's no right or wrong. Team sport user communication. Thanks, Will. Awesome. Yep. I want you to really look at, because there's about 11 children in that picture. You can probably see there's about on a leg. X. So Grace, a lot of stationary, not engaged. And Natasha, yeah, everyone looking focused on the ball playing possession. A lot of watching versus, okay, brilliant. Mixed genders in one activity, like that. Excellent. Yes, it is. That's another positive thing. Mixed genders, brilliant. What I'm going to do now as well is actually, can I do it on here? No, actually, well, yes, I can. I'm going to get my laser pointer out. Just have a look, because everyone's there and they do look relatively engaged. But I would say you've got 11 children in that picture. And ask how many are actually moving. How many are actually, like, if you look at that orange team, definitely everyone's concentrated. Goalie stuff. Will, great spot. That's what's going to be. And if I don't mind, the goalie's almost swinging on the bar. Look at the rest of the teammates. They're all just stood, just watching one person. And again, this is just a picture, but it's something to bear in mind. If your PE lesson looks like this, but This person here looks a bit taller and bigger than the others. Only 2 kids acting with brilliant. Thank you, Cara. Goalkeeper looks bored. Yeah, it really does. And and he looks like slightly maybe one of the larger kids or something. And I've seen that school where, okay, the bigger kid who doesn't look as active, you go in goal. And again, look how far away he is, or he or she is away from the activity. And you've got one person here, and the rest just standing watching that person. They're not even thinking, oh, actually, I can go help or I can support. Yeah, and Sean, I completely agree. From this picture, it would seem that person on the ball is quite able. The rest of the team are kind of almost like giving up trying to support him. So, and I've seen this a lot in coaching, and I've also seen it in my coaching where I think, right, I've got to change something here. So that's my question to you guys now. Great answers, by the way. I love that. You're really looking at that picture. It's not just focused on the person in possession. It's like when you do a P lesson, it's not just about this person here. It's stating the obvious again, but it's got to be about the whole group. So again, my next question is, what would you change? So what would you change to change that picture? What could you change? I'll give you a couple of minutes and stick it in the chat. Brilliant. Awesome. Now we're off. Natasha, that's brilliant. Small-sided games, more involvement. Compulsory passes, like that. So your player here might have to pass after 2 or 3 touches. Modified games, smaller-sided games, 3v2. Oh, I love it, Sean. Well done, Steve. Awesome. Maybe another ball. Love that, Steve. Yeah, why not? Why not? And that, I'll tell you what, that suddenly engaged the other team and this goalie. Reduced touches, 2 touches, brilliant. I like that. Limited touches, brilliant. The thing I'm always told about limited touches as well is just be careful that you're not making it too not like the game, if that makes sense. But for the real better players, you might say just for this moment, you've got to. Oh, love that, Natasha. Everyone has to touch before scoring. Excellent. Small goal, no goalie. Brilliant. Love that. So you guys have got all this stuff. Brilliant. But that's one thing you've got to, no matter what P lesson you're doing, be really aware of what's going on. Maybe have to pass so many people before you take a shot. Love that. I actually prefer that. I think Grace I've tried everyone passing to everyone in the group, and that's okay until you kind of realise the other position realise, okay, there's one person who hasn't had it. So they like just flock, just mark this one person. So again, it might be an amount of passes before you shoot. It might be you might restrict this player here and say you can only play in one half. Definitely the first thing I would do is if this is me, is what Sean mentioned, Steve mentioned, is let's get it to small-sided games. Because then straight away, if you've got 2v2, these people are starting to have more touches. And no matter what game you're playing with, it's a netball-based game or football or rugby, whatever, having more touches, they're going to enjoy it more engagement, they're going to get better. And I like even the fact someone put about having smaller goals with no goalie. I thought it was really good. I'm just trying to find that. Yeah, Steve, again, small goal, no goalie. So again, because otherwise this happens. It does happen. People are just stuck in goal. So love it. Excellent. So again, also, and think about this as well. Looking at that picture, playing football, I'm going to focus just on football for this to do with this picture. Which player would you be? And just have a think. You can stick it in the chat. Would you be the confident one on the ball, or would you be one stood watching? Again, based around playing a game of football. And you might all be like, they're confident, that's fine. So have a think. And stick it in the chat. Which player would you be? Would you be the guy swinging on the posts? Steve, that's very honest. I like that. But that's really interesting because that's a great, like, have a go, but completely useless. A lot of the children will think that because they're just, I don't play football at school. I don't. So I think the one really, Grace, I love that. Confident the ball, allow communicate space. Excellent. Thanks, Taryn. That's a good mix. Natasha, comfort the ball, allow communicate to players. So Taryn, Natasha, you'd be a great person, I think, to be like, I'd put you with Steve and go, right, Steve hasn't played as much. He thinks he's useless, but I think you can really help him and give him the confidence. So that's where you might, when you do your small-sided games, start mixing those children up. You might, if you've got an older group and say a group of girls that really wants to stick together and that really hates football, you think, right, you guys, I'm going to set your game up here. And you might go to them, you can come up with the rules. Come up with 2 or 3 rules in your game. So that you've got some ownership over the game. It's really interesting. Again, thinking you've got to create a session for everyone. So even just those 4 people, I love that. Grace, I'd love to just watch you play. It's like I'm just everywhere, just running for it. The best. Everyone's different, but you've still got to have, like, well, you've got 20 or 30 children in front of you. You might have a 2v2 or 3v3 going over there, and you might have to give them certain types of rules. I think you come up with a certain type game for you, and you might pair this guy up here with a couple of others, so that they might want be a bit more competitive than others, and it's matching it up. But don't be afraid to stick. Stick a Steve with a Natasha or a Taryn with a Grace, and see what happens. Because I think that, again, but be really obvious in what you're saying. Don't just go, right, you 2 go together, because maybe the player with more experience might go, oh, I'm stuck with that person. We go, actually, can you really help? Because this really helps you 2 pair each other up. And that's where the key thing for really good PE lessons is differentiation. Like with good teaching lessons generally, isn't it? If someone's doing maths, if you stick everyone doing long division and some of them are really struggling, like with my 2 sons, they have like sort of 3 levels. So like, and it ends up with greater depth. And so again, it's got to be flexible. Same with PE. You can't just. It's nice to stick a ball in the middle and go, "Shall we game? Brilliant!" But then you could end up with this picture. Cool, great answers as always. Thank you. So these slides are very similar to last week, but so before and during step model, but it's slightly different. I think secondary is you're working out what space you've got. It might be a large hall, and you might think, right, how am I going to manage this with the sound, the acoustics, with the amount of children I've got or young people? What activities do I have planned? And again, with primary, you wouldn't. You could argue you wouldn't go sports specific as much. You would kind of be like, okay, it's certain games are basically on agility, balance, coordination. But secondary, you might be focusing on a certain sport. So what activities have you got planned for that certain sport? That A, are inclusive, B, differentiate, and really the whole group feels like they're part of it. What equipment do you have? And again, we spoke about this primary stuff, but with secondary, again, it's have you got access to that equipment? Can you do some lot without equipment? What do you need? Have you got enough equipment to make it feel like everyone's working at their own level? So if you've got a group of 30 and you want to play small-sided games, you're going to need at least 5-6 balls. So it's things like that to work. And this one I've changed slightly. It's how many, but also who you in your lesson. Have you got a really experienced PE group where you might have, so you've got 10 or 12 of the more experienced sporty people in that school. So that made me think, actually, my session might look a bit different to, you've got, like I did a group, year 6, 7s who were like the I hate PE group. And my session was completely different. And they just wore trainers, they wore the school uniform. And it's debate, it's how many, but it's also who. And really working that out. Because everything, once you start, it's about adapting. You guys know, your answers you gave me there were brilliant. And again, while you're doing it, how can you change any of the following to impact on what's going on? And it might be space tasks. And I'm going to show you an example now. So dead simple game. Some of you might have played it before, like some end zone netball. So again, you can't move with the ball. You obviously can move to space. Once you've got the ball, you can't move. To score, you've got to make a catch in the other team's end zone. Nice and simple. Nice warm up to do with a big group. And again, I think it was Steve again, saying about add an extra ball. Like, yes. So you can add an extra ball, all the rest of it. So it's a good, nice one to do. But again, let's look at it through that sort of step model. So with space, you've got this base of a game. You might think, actually, they're finding it too easy, or there's people are scoring too easily. So I need to make the pitch smaller. So there's less space, less time. Again, or if they're finding it too difficult and you actually want them to find a bit more space, or really look at the space, you might do a bigger pitch. Can you change it? Do you need less or space or more time? Less space, more time? Yeah, why not? So again, there's loads of things you can do with space. You might even make the scoring area smaller because people are finding it too easy. or if they're not, make the scoring area bigger, it's entirely up to you. Or change the shape. Might even change the shape. Or have end zones, or both four end zones. Entirely up to you. Again, task. You have to roll, bounce, kick the ball. Again, you might start like netball, but you think actually, if it's a warm-up game, we want to like work our shoulders. So you've got to do or work to practice our throw-ins in football, or a chest best. So you might really specify what sort of task you're going to do, or you need to bounce it. Or I do it with cricket, where I get them to roll it, so they're getting used to bending their knees and getting low and being quick on their feet. Or again, if you're working with goalkeepers, it might be you might want them to kick the ball out of hand, and then you can make a big pitch with the kicking the ball out of hand, and then they've got to kind of catch it up. It could be a great game. And again, these just loads of ideas. And then you might bring in a target. So task changes again. Now you've got wickets to throw out, or a goal to throw into, or you might be certain areas. I'm going to next time when I get back to my football coaching, I need my team to play a bit wider. So I might do 2 scoring zones that are wide, and you can't score in the middle. So again, think about how you can change the task. Equipment, different types of size of balls, that's quite obvious, but then also like flat cones, round cones, things that might get in the way. There's a great football game, but you could do it for anything, where you put balls on the cones in the middle of the pitch, and if you knock that ball off when you're playing, you have to go put it back on. So again, it encourages teams to play wide. You could do that with netball, rugby, with any kind of invasion sport. You could really look at that. And a really key that you guys have spoken about this all, create multiple mini games, because I think that makes a massive difference. When I played this game in secondary school, when I was quite a young coach, and I was wondering why are half the group not engaged? And then I split it into like games of 2v2 and 3v3, and A, people worked harder, B, they got more touches, and C, they're having so much better time than when we just had one big game. And we spoke about before Christmas, spoke about bench ball, because when I worked with back in the day when you could actually see people face to face, with this workshop face to face, I said, come up with a game. We can do a session, and each group, I put 5 groups, I think there were, and about 3 of the groups did bench ball. And my real problem with bench ball is not that it's not enjoyable, is the fact it ends up either with the 2 best people in the middle playing and catching, and then 2 people on the bench who are doing all the catching, and everyone else stood on the bench watching, going, "Yeah, we scored." It's like, well, that's great, and if people enjoy it, that's fine, but you're not getting much learning and development there. So again, it's like that. All those sort of things, can you develop and change? Okay, right, because this was quite successful with our primary one. So I want you to think as many games as possible from a secondary perspective, things that you think might work well when you were at secondary school. And then we're going to take it a stage further this week compared to last week. So 2 minutes. Again, stick them on. You guys had some great ideas last time. And then stick them on the chat. How many secondary school games you played? You can trip bench ball in there. I don't mind. So off you go. Anything you remember from secondary school that really thought that was a good game? I just enjoy playing that. Softball. Oh, cool. I like anything like that. Softball rounders. Love it. 3 versus 2 attackers versus defenders drill works. Oh, I love it. Yeah. Dodgeball. Quick cricket. Awesome. Like Cara, I love anything like 3v2s. I do anything like that. It's really good. It's like a mini game, isn't it? So it feels like you're part, rather than just trying to teach defending on its own or attacking on its own. Couldn't beat around the world in badminton. Yeah, good stuff. That is good. Tennis. Steve, is that tennis generally? I like that. Dodgeball. Excellent. Dodgeball's popular. King of the Hill. Kill it. Oh, kill it. Brilliant. Love it. Okay, what we do now? Keep going. Tennis around the world. Yeah. Oh, okay, that what you meant. I like that one where you're constantly trying to stay in the and moving around. That's brilliant. The key thing with things like that is having not too big a group, so you're waiting for you go, like, or you get out really early and you just stood there waiting. It's the best people just keep going. Running or dribbling relays. Capture the flag. Brilliant. Volleyball, tennis over the net. But you catch the ball, train it. But love that. And these are great games. They're great stuff. So what I would do, right, thinking that this is another Pixar kind of thing, is one thing they do when they write their stories is they discount like the first thing that comes to their mind, and like, so we've been trying to be really creative. So with your games you've got here, I want you to think of a couple of ways you could adapt them. So especially like something like running or dribbling relays, or King of the Hill, or around the world. How could you make it even more creative and actually more inclusive, so people make it even better? What could you add? And just chuck it in there. And again, there's no right or wrong with this. Be creative. Just think outside the box. Again, what could you add? You love those games when you're at secondary, like dodgeball. What could you add to dodgeball to make it? And it might be just daft, like you add music, or you put music on a certain for 2 minutes. And that's double scoring, or you get double points if you hit someone with the ball. Brilliant, excellent. Everyone touched the ball. Love it. Bigger ball to make it easier. Fantastic. Excellent. Yeah, definitely. I like that. So there's actually the end product as well, Cara. I love that. And I would just say with those relays, make sure they're small teams. So if you are doing relays, again, don't have teams of 7 or 8. Have teams of 3 and 4. So they're finished their go and they're ready to go again. Dodgeball, having to catch the ball and shooting it. Oh, love that, Sean. That's great. Softer ball for those who might be scared. Brilliant. And assessing that, Natasha. I love that. Think of your group. Brilliant. 2v1 King of the Hill for sure. But yes, it's to make what next one 3v2. Love it. Oh, Taryn, I like that. So you're adding, that's like affecting the task. The bits is like you can have a little countdown or something like that. And even just dress it up like, right, balls up Taylor, you've got to get rid of this within 3 seconds. So you're getting them to think quicker. Brilliant. Decrease space, increase challenge. Love that. Yeah, going back to that step principle. Loads of it's around task and small pitching around the world for less. Excellent. Love that. Love that, Grace. You're really thinking about that group. That group struggling. Okay, I can get around. And even with around the world, if I competitive development gets them engaged, it does. And that's the thing. You've got to judge that, because it is a tricky, especially when you know, because you're nearer that age than I am by a mile. As you know, you have that picture again. You've got that competitive group. You've got the guys swinging on the goal, but it's finding a game or games, and this might be you splitting into mini games. You might have, say if you're doing around the world, you might have 2 versions of it, where one it's like, okay, if you really want a competition, this is the one where you're out, and this is the one where actually you have 5 lives, and if you don't get in, if we don't get it back, you lose one of those lives. Because my son went to tennis lessons and did around, I think he did like a version of around the world, but because of the coach was doing most of the serving and hitting in all the lesson actually, and so sometimes they'd have one go and they'd be out. It's just like, can you develop it so it's 3 for second, and so it's not just one go and you're out. Like you've got 5 lives, so at least you're going to get 4 or 5 shots. So there's kind of things like that. So you can add loads of stuff. I love the fact when people you've got to shoot a basket under pressure, or you've got to do certain things, or one group you can only, if a group's really good winning right in dodgeball, well that group you can only hit people below the knee. Everyone else you can hit them wherever you like. But so it's adapted. But you've got so many great ideas, and that's what I would do. See, we're going to talk about structure in a minute, but don't just settle for, oh, I've always played 3 lives around the world, but so not straight. Love that, Grace. Yes, spot on. Definitely. I think we get used to playing a game and it's great, but if you ever not sure, just think, well, how long has that young person been out? How have they been out? And I think you could almost get someone to observe your lesson and go, I want you to focus on 2 people, and can you just, or one person, get a stopwatch and go, and every time they're active, stick a stopwatch on, or the other way around, anytime they're inactive, because the research, and it was actually done at Loughborough was with Chris Cushing, was they researched some, I think it was Leicester City in the community coaches, and they found that some of the coaches, the session, because of drinks breaks and etc. and coach talking, that people in the session were only active for 2/3 of the session. So a third of the session was made up of instruction, debrief, drinks breaks, etc., etc. So it's like so much time to just think, oh, brilliant. So there's more. Gives it a different task. Excellent, brilliant. Life system. Everyone above one life loses one after. Excellent. So waiting. You should love that, Steve. Sign captains, leaders, change it around. Love that as well, Natasha. Definitely. Because if you keep picking the same people, again, it's very obvious what's going to happen. So I really like that. Some great ideas. And don't just make sure you write some of these down and pick the ideas you like that other people have come up with, because they'll be great. They'll just make it so your lesson's just a bit more inclusive. People are waiting less and not inactive. Okay. We talked about this last time, and again, there's not much difference, if at all. But with this, you might, with the warm-ups, I'm still definitely not advocating any kind of lappage. There should be none of that. You can have some great warm-up games, and you guys have got some great ideas. And I'm talking to people who know their stuff. But the warm-ups, you know that you might have to do some more stretching. With primary school children, I never really do any stretching because I know that they're flexible enough, so they don't really need it. But I know with secondary, once they get to a certain age, again, if it's as cold as it is now, then they will need maybe a bit of dynamic stretching following the warm-up. But don't be afraid to start with a game, like a lowish, medium intensity game, and then bring your stretching in. But there's nothing wrong with you, like scrapping some of the listeners going, okay, I'm going to start with a game, I'm going to add things to it, like you guys did here, and and there's no kind of set your warm-ups be 20 minutes, or you can vary it. If it's working well and you feel like the young people your children are developing, then stick with it and ask them, oh, what rule should we chuck in now? And they'll come up with some great stuff, just like you have when I've asked you. Brilliant. Sports kitchen my foot to brilliant. And again, remember our Queen analogy. If you've only got 20 minutes, half an hour, make it very active. Make it so they're barely stopping. And that might mean you might just do warm up and mini games and go straight from that. And then okay, what's going to be in your game? Brilliant. What rules are you going to bring in? And if your class is really engaged and likes working with each other, you might have 3 mini games going on, and there's different rules in each one. So okay, you've got a minute. You're going to swap teams over. You've got a minute to explain to this team what your rules are in your game. So again, you're kind of mixing it up, and they're constantly having to think, and you might think about a rewarding, great teamwork, all that sort of stuff. Sorry, I'm digressing. On the structure, again, you can be as flexible as you like. But I always think as well, like the TV and the film thing, end on a high. I mean, obviously you might have a cool down, a bit of a debrief, but end on a great game. And if mini games are going brilliantly and your class are loving it, then that's fine. End on that one. Don't end on like a really slow cool down, or just make sure you end on a big, like, oh wow, brilliant, that was great. And same with your warm up. Like the analogy I used, I think before Christmas, there was the James Bond example, and I've stolen this from is it Professor Richard Cheetham. He's kind of MBE. He's like a really prominent person in coaching. Look him up, because he's someone that is great. And if you see a podcast or anything with him on, definitely watch it. He talks about James Bond. James Bond is never, well, you have a nice easy stroll, or does James Bond, he's having a coffee with his paper. He's like, no, there's a car chase, he's been chased, going to be shoots him, and there's all that going on. All the stuff my two sons absolutely love. So again, that's what your warm-up should be like. Because imagine you've got 30 secondary school children in front of you, or young people. The last thing they want is a dull warm-up. If you start off with like a great game, or it can be anything, then suddenly you've got them on side. When I was researching for this session, again, I looked at for you guys what's online around sort of session plans, and it's not a lot. And I discovered this one, and it made me laugh a bit, because it was around rugby, and it was like, first thing to do for a warm-up was stand in 2 lines, and then you run towards someone and just pop a pass to them. There's nothing wrong with that, but you've got 2 lines straight away. And I'm like, well, but then what I noticed was the next activity was in a square with a partner, move around the square, passing to each other whilst avoiding the people. Like, that's your warm-up. That's your warm up rather than standing in a line. Because it's nothing like the game, so I'll discount it fairly quickly. And also, if you're standing in a line, imagine when even that picture it looks cold. If like today, and you're outside, you've got two lines of kids or young people, and you're standing in a line just throwing passes. No, or make a great game. You know, we spoke about sharks, jellyfish, and dolphins last week. I've done that with older children, where, again, just to recap, if you weren't here last week, there's a primary school game which I developed from Stuck in the Mud. So you've got sharks, say a group of 20, 3 sharks are going to try and go and tag people, or if you were doing rugby, might be tag them, tap tackle. Then you've got 3 dolphins who are your rescuers, and the rest are jellyfish. So sharks trying to get the jellyfish, trying to tag them. If they get tagged, they freeze, or they put their hand up, and the dolphins can rescue them. You could do that with a rugby ball. Okay, you're rescuing with a rugby ball, throw the ball to them, you move in space, and they pass it back, and then the jellyfish are free. I think that makes sense. I know it'd be much easier if I was in a hall and we could actually do that. But think of Stuck in the Mud. Think of people who are rescuing people who are stuck in the mud with a rugby ball. It's a simple way of putting it. And that's your warm up. Because again, it feels like a bit like the game because there's passing, there's movement. You're trying to avoid, use agility to avoid people. Again, it's high energy. It's interesting. You can swap people around. It doesn't really matter if you're good or not. Again, for those people who like running around, who was it who? So if you're Grace and you're running around everywhere, this game's for you. But the thing is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're amazing at passing a rugby ball or it includes you. It's like a souped-up game of tag. But again, it's exciting, it's interesting, and it might be if you're practicing passing movement, it's a great place to start. And then you can break it down. It's like you guys have spoken about your 3v2s. You can start doing that from there and look at a bit more structure. So again, think of that Pixar rule, like moving those building blocks around, because you'll see, like with films nowadays, that sometimes they'll start with the end, won't they? You were like, and then it'll go 6 months later, 6 months earlier, and I was watching Deadpool 2 the other day. I just watched the end of it, and exactly did that. Okay, this is happening. Oh, but now we're going to go back, and don't be afraid to start with your lesson. Start with a game. What's wrong with start with some mini games, then break it down, do another game, a mini game 3v2, whatever you want to do, and then back into those games. There's no hard and fast rules. As long as the children are enjoying it and they're learning from it, then you know it's right. And again, reiterate that Pixar rule of what's interesting to you might not be interesting to that group. So I've done it a million times. Where I've designed what I thought, oh, this is a great lesson. I spent an afternoon designing one for football once, got to it, and the kids just didn't like it. It just didn't click with them. And they were messing around with the rules, and I was like, it wasn't their fault, completely my fault. But again, so find out what's interesting for them. Or even go, what I should have done was, how could you change this so it makes it better? And I'm like, oh, you could add this. Trust the people. Let's pass that responsibility to them a bit. Okay, so how are we doing for time? Got loads of time, that's good. So I want you to have a look at this kind of continuum, because again, I mean, there's a couple of like continuums we're going to look at. And again, you could spend a whole morning on this, about how you're going to be as a secondary school coach or PE teacher. And it's having to think whether you're going to be really directive. In fact, let's just open that question up. Have a think of your secondary school teachers and where were they on the scale? Were they like quite directive and instructing, this is how it's going to be, and giving advice, still giving some feedback, but this is the way, like Mandalorian, this is the way. Or were they non-directive and just let you chuck the ball and let you get on with it? Or were they quite like that way? I want you to stick in the chat whereabouts they were. You might want to use one of the phrases on the continuum. Hopefully you can see that okay. You can put 2 or 3 in the chat. Very directive. Okay, Steve, I'm not surprised. But again, don't. Brilliant, Clara. Excellent. Yeah, I get that completely. They want when it's a big group, they want control. They're going to be quite direct. Excellent, Taryn. Directive, instructing, giving advice. So definitely round this end, the push, sort of solving someone else's problems. Okay, yeah, that's interesting, Grace. And I think that's a lot. That happens a lot in coaching where, and I still see it loads today. I try not to do it as much now. Is coaches and PE teachers are quite directive when there's a skill because they think there's a certain way to play it or certain way to do that skill. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. But what's interesting is if you look at, if I take my sport, well, I love most sports, but cricket's probably the one I coach the most. And again, we spoke about this before. Different players do it different ways. Look at England played India the other day, and no two bowlers was the same. No two batter was really the same. So again, it's like that's really interesting. What like Grace has said, directive when learning a skill, we think a skill must be this way, and actually, it's actually learning a technique, isn't it? Because skill is probably more. We could argue what technique and skill is. Skill is more technique in context, isn't it? So we're in the middle of a game, and yet, as Steve's put, there's no reflection. But again, yeah, I think I completely agree with that. Before, just in general PE lessons at secondary, there almost didn't seem to be time for reflection. Like for me, it was very much play a game, get changed, play a game, go back in, get changed, and go to lunch. Well, Sean, that's great. That's really positive. You know, I'm not saying this right or wrong way, but I think we need to move towards the pull area where you're helping people solve problems rather than always giving advice or instructing. I think it's really, so you can ask some great questions, and again we could spend time on open and closed questions, some nice open questions on what happened there, why did you do that? That's really interesting. I like the way you did that. Why did you do that? Rather than, and I see this in football coaching, don't do that, do this. Like, no, you need to play it down the line. But what? Why? Because you think you know it's and that's the thing. We as coaches we're desperate to solve stuff, aren't we? Desperate to help people, which is great. But especially with young, even yes, Grace. To be honest, you know what? I was waffling a bit then, if I'm honest. I was waffling, and then Grace has gone non-directive allows development. That's, but I think you can, but there's a role for you to help that, to like unpick some of that. So again, it's that idea of you chuck a ball in, but don't be afraid to kind of go, well, how's it? How have you got on? What have you done? And then get them to discuss around it. And they go, okay, now you set them another problem. Okay, now you can, as you say, only take 2 or 3 touches, or you can only have 5 seconds on the ball, or whichever sport you're playing. Or if you're playing a striking and fielding game, you get double points if you're going to hit that way. And they've got to work out the problem. So, but Grace, yeah, you summed that up. I think it allows more development than if you're directive, like what Steve said right at the start, very directive. It's almost like a one way to do something. And we know that in sport. We know you watch any sport, and the people who do things differently. They do things brilliantly, and they look completely different doing it. I watched the football last night. It was 5-4, 5-4 Everton Tottenham, and I support Everton, so I was quite pleased. But Harry Kane's a completely different player from Richarlison. And if you don't watch football, I'm sorry, I've gone into babble, but both successful at what they do. Excellent, I love that. Okay. Yeah. Where would you like to be? Where would you like to be as a coach teacher? You can just quickly chuck it in there. Where would you feel comfortable being on that continuum? Excellent, Taryn. Good stuff. Cool. Thanks, Sean. Good stuff. You've been directive. That's where you feel comfortable doing. Okay. I like that, Natasha, because I think that's one thing. If you remember anything, is can we get children to think for themselves? And that might be like nothing wrong with Sean saying I'm going to be directive, but can we direct? Okay, I'm going to be directive when I'm setting stuff up, but can getting things for themselves. Cara, brilliant. A balance in the middle, brilliant. Grace, interesting, Steve. I like that. So left as a teacher, slightly right as a coach, and that's I find that interesting. So, I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of what's the difference between a teacher and a coach. For me, I try to keep things simple. So teaching, sometimes you're teaching something new. Coaching, you're coaching an existing something. But I don't. I think I need more. I need more to unpick that a bit more. I think it also, and you'll see this phrase a lot with academic and professors that talk about it depends. if you've got a class that's, oh, sorry, I'm just going to read it. Oh, sorry, wait a minute. Taryn, it depends on the situation. Brilliant. Taryn, you've answered what I was going to say. I'm not going to waffle anymore. So you read what Taryn's written. That's exactly it. Sometimes it will depend on the group you have. Sean said, as a training teacher, I should let students get on with games as I want to be possible. But realise stepping back would be more effective to observe from a distance. Yeah, I think it's trusting that you've set up a game that's going to bring learning out. Like same if you're in a class teaching English or maths or art, have you set an environment up and a game or a task up that's going to bring out that learning? And you might be quite directive at first, like this is the task we're doing, but then can you, like there's a great, I'll put it out here, there's a great kind of continuum here that they work with, and it's all about giving more and more control to the children. But as Sean said really well, that it depends, and Taryn, it depends on the class. You might have a really tough class in a really tough school, and you have to stay in directive, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, because otherwise, because the most important thing is, are the kids safe? Because that's like, if they're not safe and you've gone, yeah, I'm non-directive, you guys go do what you like. That, I'm not saying that would happen, but it's something you have to be in that direction, that have that control. It's knowing your group and your class and how you can move, because you do want them to be able to think for themselves. Like if you go look at elite sport, you need your players. I think there's been a few examples recently, whether it's England in the rugby or good examples of England cricket, or some of the football teams, Man City in the football, is they're coached quite directive, but they can think for themselves on that pitch or in the pool or wherever. So again, it depends. And this is I think this is a bit old-fashioned in a way, but I thought I'd put it on anyway. Around for a minute. Again, that's a continuum of, it's a bit like we're talking about here. Have you got the command style where you're kind of like, this is my way and I want you to do this? I think sometimes you want to be towards your guided discovery and your trial and error, and let people, someone put, like we put about, let me get it up. Grace put, non-directive allows development. I think it does at times, but you've still got to support it as a coach or a PE teacher, and like, let's reflect on what happened there. Maybe it might be the great question, or might be like, stop everything. So and so, just show me what you just did there. What have you noticed so and so doing there? And it might be, and they'll be like, oh, okay, they did that, and they did that, and it's really using all those tools, but trusting your group that you don't have to just go right this way. I want you to do it this way, because otherwise you are starting development because you're saying there's one way to do something, and that's just not true in sport or PE or physical activity. But again, depends on the group, and sometimes the children or the pupils you with who struggle with PE and sport might really want just to have a go, just to go take a ball. There was a hockey group I was with in secondary school, and we never got coached. But actually, we loved it. We just loved it. We had all sorts of abilities, and people just kind of got in. They got stuck in, sometimes too much in hockey. But again, we were definitely in the trial and error. There's no coach there. So again, it's judging that group and what do they need. Again, we'll still, because I think you've given some great answers. And I'll do some research for this. I was looking at some good examples, just stuff you can take away. And I think this quote really is an article in the Guardian about good examples from secondary PE. Sorry, and I really like this quote from this school. It's like, our aim is something for everyone, and I think, like, I was going to do my little. If I was going to highlight anything, it's this. Because it's tricky with secondary PE, because there's lots of sport and but can you find something for everyone? Like those girls we spoke about before Christmas, about the work I did with some college girls, and they found clubber size was the thing that really engage them, because at first they'd had traditional sport thrown at them, they just didn't like it, pun intended, and so they find something for them again that they could enjoy. And what's really great about this school is and if you go into secondary PE, can you get insight from the students, because they're the ones experiencing it. You can think that you know what they want, but then you're only basing it on your opinion, or maybe you and your staff. Actually go and speak. This school went to speak to students. They brought students in for lunches where they'd kind of chat about what they liked, what they didn't like, what worked well. So they're in control of the curriculum, not control of the curriculum, they're influencing the curriculum, which I think is where we need to go. Otherwise, our secondary PE is going to stay the same as it has for the last 20, 30 years, or more than that, where it's very sports specific. This is what we're going to do. As you guys put in some of your answers from last time, based around, it's a bit serious, it's a bit intense. There's nothing wrong with the competition, but not everyone wants that intensity of, oh, it's about performance. People just want to play. The most important thing, if the COVID's highlighted many things, but one of the most important things is keeping people active, because that it improves health, but only if it's done well. Only if it's done well. Okay, so here's some of the things you put last time. So you guys put about praise and I think these things to really take away with you around being creative, being fun, but being really caring, creating inclusive games. And again, I'll work with Alex and we'll send something out so you've got all your brilliant answers from the chat and from here. But you guys, the stuff you come out with is not trying to cheat, but it's a privilege to for me to kind of talk to you guys, because you've got such great ideas and it's brilliant. And these 2 or 3 really nice quotes, and you know what? They come from you. I saw these today and I thought, I'm going to put these in because you guys have come up with this. That first one about encouragement more than technical brilliance. And it is. That doesn't mean you ignore technique. If you think, I can help this person technically get better, that's great. But again, maybe can you do it through games? So it actually feels like the game. But anyway, but the most important thing is you're encouraging, you're getting them active and engaged in the first place. And then you can really, if you want to focus on some technical stuff, and they do, then do that. And the middle one, someone put that last time, understand what people desire, because that's the key thing. It's their lesson, it's their PE lesson. And you've got to create, can it be the best hour of their week? And then the bottom one, a really good one from you guys last time, develop those holistic skills, because PE done well can develop all of those. PE done poorly can be I don't know the polite way of putting it. PE done poorly, especially secondary PE done poorly, gives people some crap memories of physical activity and sport. And it can be there's a range of things it can be, but done well, it can be all of these things. And people remember great teachers. My sister still remembers a great secondary school teacher coming in. He was only supply. He came in when the normal grumpy, burnt out, teacher who'd had enough 10 years before he retired. He was off, and this new guy came in for a couple of weeks, and it's like a breath of fresh air. They'll remember that. If you've got enthusiasm and you're engaging everyone, they'll remember you negatively. It's like, oh yeah, they're just like the ones who were sporty. And you guys won't be like that. I know you won't be. So again, great quotes from you again. Okay, in the chat, we've done 2 sessions. Again, if you've only been to this one, it's fine. But just what's your biggest takeaways straight away from this? Put it in the chat. What have you, even if it's 1 or 2 things you can take away when you go into your coaching or if you go into your teaching, what things that have you thought about? Or even if it's challenged you a bit, or it might be reassured you that I was right all along. So in the chat, just put in your biggest kind of things you've taken away from maybe the 2 sessions or even just today. It might be someone else's answer. You have some great answers, and it might be around directive and can I ask great questions, breaking games down. Just stick it in the chat. Anything you think from the last, because this hour's just blown by. Oh, crikey, there we go. Brilliant. I like the watch it time and individual idea. We'll definitely use that. Good stuff. You can create some activities to a step model. Great, Sean. Yeah, it's so flexible. Brilliant, Cara. Never assume, and that's so important. It's their lesson. You may look, I've always loved sport, but I know other people haven't. I love that quote, Cara. That's a fantastic quote as well. Natasha, brilliant, because you can always improve. I'll take things away from me, like anything. You can always improve. I love that, and to be a really good coach or PE teacher, that's what you've got to do. And it's nothing, and it actually. Love that, Will. Find something for everyone. There's nothing wrong with that, reflecting and going, oh, okay, because actually it makes you accept your mistakes a bit more. I think. I don't want to miss out. Taryn, brilliant. Be creative. Understand your audience. Be willing to change session. Excellent. Grace, always think about individual needs. Love it. Do people want to improve to become the best athlete they can be, or they're just there to have fun? Yeah, you've got to assess that. What are their motivations? What are their motivations? Because everyone's different. Not everyone wants to be a pro sports person or do performance sport. Oh, love that. That's fantastic. Make sure the session is for the students, not for us. That's really, that's, you guys are somewhat better than I could. I'm just a conduit. Is that a word? Conduit for your brilliant answers. Every game can be made more enjoyable. Yeah, just add to it. Try stuff, and if it goes wrong, you think, all right, that ball didn't work. That's fine. I've done that a million times. And Grace's directive on skill, less so in the game. Yeah, like that. Again, but if you're being directive on skill, be flexible. Just like, again, if someone's not able to, say if someone can't catch a ball and their hands are over here and they catch it like that, there's a safety thing. But if someone's got an unorthodox way of hitting a ball or an orthodox way of swimming or whatever, passing the ball, but it's working, just be wary of getting too much involved and thinking, right, you need to change it. TV knowledge is definitely something I will keep in mind. Love that. Thank you, Cara. How to adapt games to increase time for movement for all. Yes, Sean. Love it. That's because that's the key thing for me. You can make a PE lesson look so lovely and organised, and cues and all the rest of it, but how much impact is it having, and how much enjoyment are people having? Because most sport is chaotic, especially team sports and invasion sports are chaotic. You look at rugby, football, netball, dodgeball. Oh my God, dodgeball! It's chaos going on. So people need to adapt to chaos, don't they? Rather than think it's not regimented. Your answers are fantastic. And again, I've got 1 minute left. I said bang on. So don't be afraid to come back to me and go, oh, I'm thinking about this, and keep researching. Like book I'm reading at the moment, Coaching Athletes to Be Their Best. Again, that's around motivational interviewing and also how you deal with athletes rather than just trying to do a quick fix of going, it needs to be this. It talks about really getting under the sort of bonnet of people and like going, okay, you tell me what you're feeling, what's going on. Because that's how people will learn if they're reflecting and they've got change talk and all sorts of stuff like that. Share your ideas. Love that. Natasha, you know what? That is a great one to finish on. Share your ideas with us and learn from each other. Because again, reading and stuff is great. Watching documentaries, things like that, films, spotting where coaching appears in films. But you'll get so much from just going to watch people. Go to watch a coach, and you might go watch them and think, I wouldn't have done that. But I'm definitely going to use that. And I've done that a million times. So really go and watch people. Natasha, that's brilliant. You know what? I'm not even going to go with that bit because that's just to talk about the rest of it. Thank you, everyone. But Natasha just finished it better than I could. And thank you for your time. Thank you. 6 o'clock on a Thursday night in the middle of a global pandemic, and you've come to do this session. And you've come with great ideas, and you should be really proud of yourself. And it is a privilege for me to talk to you guys. And hopefully one day, maybe we'll be face to face and we'll do some training stuff. But thank you ever so much. And awesome. You're all awesome. Right, let's see if I can.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Oh, no worries. Let me come back. Still stay on screen. There you go. Guys, thank you ever so much. You're awesome. Thank you for your comments. Again, take care. If you want to stay behind, I'll be here for another few minutes. If everyone wants to stay behind and ask some questions. But honestly, yeah. And email me. Alex got my email address. So again, get no worries. Thanks, Will. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Cara. Thanks, Natasha. Grace, awesome. Thanks, Steve. Great answers. Thanks, Taryn. Awesome. Well done, everyone. That's great stuff.
Hi, Peter. Do you mind if I ask a question?
Of course, fire away.
In terms of, because I assume you somewhat enjoyed sport for most of your life, as have I done. Like, how did you get over mentally, or have you for yourself, the fact that you are going to encounter kids that just hate it? Because I obviously want to make it inclusive for them, and that's really important. But how do you get over that just in your head of there will be kids? It's like maths teachers can't get over the fact that some kids can't do maths.
Yeah, it's true. And I think you have to, I think what really helped me was I had some rubbish experiences of sports at school. Not rubbish, but no, rubbish. Like, for example, I signed for a local football team with my friends, and I wasn't great at football. I was a goalkeeper, but the manager didn't really want me there. And in the end, he basically told me, well, he made up excuse, and this story will go somewhere in the end. But he made up excuse where he said, "Oh, you haven't filled the form in right. You can't play." And I'd literally filled this form in exactly the same as my friend. I knew I had, and it just boiled down to he didn't want me to play for his team, and I was 12, and he's basically he's telling me I'm not good enough, and I was like. And that happened with other things when I was at junior school as well. So luckily, and it was luckily a bit that I had empathy straight away for people who said they hate sport, because I think I was lucky I had my mum, and they always pushed me to go and watch sport and do sport. So I always loved it in spite of some of the experiences I had. So I straight away have that. I think that gave me that empathy. And well, as you say, some people like, why don't you love sport? Why don't you love maths? And it's tricky, but I think I was lucky I experienced the poorer side of like sport, where kids are made to feel a bit like, well, if you're not good enough, you're not playing. So as a coach or PE teacher, go in that attitude of, and you might spot them a mile off as well. The children who come in and they're straight away, you can see the look on their face that they're not straight away. First thing I think of is, okay, I'm going to try and help that child or that person, because I do roughly know what it's like, because I was never amazing at sport, but I loved it. And that's at times that made it worse because I loved it, but I wasn't very good at it. So it's like, so the popular kids would be like, well, we'll put the football team. And so as a PE teacher, whether you're primary or secondary, have that empathy and that compassion for everyone in your group, and just understand, and even just read about examples of children who haven't had a great. There's even comedians who come out and go, we talk about like their PE experience, and it's awful. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it's helpful. Thanks.
But yeah. So who was that? Who was that, by the way?
Oh, that's Steve. Hi.
Oh, Steve. Thank you for all your great answers as well. Yeah. So what do you do, Steve? What sports do you like coaching, or?
So I coach lacrosse, and I'm looking to do that potentially in one of the southern schools as either a graduate or something like that. I'm an engineering student, so I'm not on as like the PE route per se. But yeah.
Oh, brilliant! But definitely, your answers are brilliant in the session.